Alright, we should be live. Microphone looks good. Alright, we're back, and we are building more Bilbo. Hi, Bilbo. How excited he is. That blurry photo. If you were any more blurry, be a Sasquatch. I forget what. I think it was the actual, not Magic website spoiler, but hey, we've got Bilbo from the Commander deck. Here's what he looks like. They always look like the artwork looks so blurry. The game text is fine, but the artwork, especially around the face, it's very noticeable. Anyway, so we're building more Bilbo, and we are at 90 cards. The goal is 60 spells and then 40 lands. And we need to get this from 90 to 60 then. And it is taking forever. Because every card we cut is something I either desperately wanted to be in this deck, or is one of the generic cards you kind of need for Commander. You know, your mana ramp, your removal spells, your card draw. Excuse me. So, everything hurts at this point. It's been hurting for a while. It started hurting around 120 cards or so, like really bad. It's like, oh, I'm gonna cut this now. I cut what was it, Boon Reflection. Like, it doubles my life gain in a deck that's trying to have all of the life. Yeah, if you randomly started watching these on episode 30, then what you may not realize is we are not actually building towards Bilbo's, ultimate, whatever you want to call it, this 111 life thing. We can certainly do this. Like, this is very doable. The goal is, I always wanted to build a commander deck where the idea was to outlast, outlive, and grind everybody else down until they lose the will to keep playing. And I've wanted to build a deck like that, kind of as a thought experiment to see what that deck would look like. And I haven't found a commander I liked for it yet. So I may come back and revisit this if I find like a mono-white commander that fills this niche, or a white-black or white-green commander that I really like for this type of deck, but for the time being, we have Bilbo. He's a life gain matters commander in these colors, so I kind of wanted to do it. And we're going to see if we can outlive all of our opponents to the point where they just want to give up rather than keep playing. Or actually outlive them to the point where they die because they have run out of cards in their deck, and we have been slowly and surely exiling everything to make sure that they can't replenish their resources while we can get ours back. That was the goal anyway, and that is what Bilbo is here to do, so... But yeah, we have to figure out which... We have 90 cards, so 30 of them have to go. That is literally 1 in 3 cards. Bilbo is one of the cards we have to keep, so him and one other card, and then we have to cut a card for those two, and so on until we are done. Oops, sorry. I went to mute the microphone to spare you the hacking cough I was about to do, and I wound up bumping into it, so that was probably unpleasant, and I apologize. For water. And I'm just going over the list to start off with again. Looking for anything that strikes me as maybe now that I've been away from the list for a little while, and now that I'm looking at it again, maybe I don't need these cards anymore. Eternal Witness, Crucible of Worlds, Sakura Tribe Elder. It's possible we're going to lose Michiko. I do like her as another No Mercy effect, but she is worse than the other No Mercy effects because she's not killing the thing that's dealing us damage. She's killing something that player controls instead, and it's per source of damage, so if they deal me 10 with a big old Ulamog, and they have a whole bunch of lands because they cast an Ulamog that they don't need anymore, Well, then I guess they're losing lands, and I'm taking 10 to the face every turn until I die, and losing 4 permanents or the top 20 cards of my deck. Neither one of which is sustainable. So, not that Ulamog would die to any of the No Mercies, but I'm just saying, like, it's not like the fact that she makes them sacrifice instead of destroying the thing that is hitting me doesn't help because they're not forced to sacrifice that thing. And the Witch King of Angmar only makes them sacrifice one creature, and I've already cut, like, Crawl Space and whatnot. Crawl Space in Witch King of Angmar is actually really good, because if we can block one of the things that's damaging me, then they have to sacrifice the other one. So, but I've already cut the Crawl Space, and I don't think the Witch King is good enough for this deck. Like, I would rather have Michiko than the Witch King if I'm not going to have, like, everything in play, and it just be like, okay, you're losing all of your stuff every time you hit me, so. Yeah, Witch King would handle something like a lone Eldrazi Titan attacking me. Like, I'd lose a bunch of stuff for the attack, but it should finish them off afterwards. Plus, I got a Ring Tempt. I keep forgetting he does that. Like, he's got so much good game text. The idea that he also tempts you with the ring every time your opponent connects is just kind of silly. Leyline, one of our main ways to exile opponent's stuff. It's a little bit of a non-bow with some of our cards, but the ones that care about stuff going to the graveyard also care about ours, and Leyline doesn't affect us, so we will still get cards going to our graveyard. But yeah, it's a little bit rough that it only that when we have this going, we lose some of our extra life gain from opponents' things dying. Especially like the Fangren Marauder when they lose an artifact. Fangren Marauder in this deck just absolutely ruins treasure. It's like every time you activate a treasure token, I gain 5 life. Yep. Yeah, you have to be killing me in some way other than caring about my life total at this point, or you are never going to kill me. Also, combines very well with Fracturing Gust. It's like, oh, all of your artifacts are going to the graveyard, guess I'll gain 7 life for each one of them. That seems like a number an opponent can overcome, right? If they just lost like 5 artifacts and I gain 35 life. I mean, that's only most of an extra player. Plus 2 life for each enchantment. Plus 2 life for each of my artifacts and enchantments that I'm losing. And boy, howdy, do I have enchantments. Avenger of Zendikar. Avenger's definitely in danger of getting cut. He's a 7 mana. He almost definitely makes the 7 tokens, though. Like, 5 seems like the most reasonable low-end number for him, because I ramp with mana. Like, our mana acceleration is land-based for the most part, so once I'm at 7 mana, it is probably going to be because I have 5+ lands in play. So Avenger of Zendikar is very likely to make all of the tokens, which will then trigger all of the, when a creature comes into play, I gain life effects that we're running, which is currently, I think, 3. There's a 4th one we could be running. I think Soul's Attendant is actually a Soul Sister in full, right? It's not just, yeah, another creature enters the battlefield. We might retroactively go back and add her if I can find room, but for right now, we're just focused on the ones that we have, which are the original Essence Warden, or original Soul Warden, then Essence Warden, and the Ariok. That's like 2 white. I think it's Ariok Champion, as pro red and black, and has the Soul Sister effect of gaining life whenever another creature enters the battlefield. Um, Hope, Bolus' Citadel. Little speck on my screen. Rid of it though. Casualty 4 because we're green black. I can't not run that card. Teleportation circle. Excuse me. There's a part of me that's thinking about teleportation circle, because if we cut that and we cut Conjurer's Closet, then we cut Norn, and then we get rid of a few of the comes into play do a thing cards. So I think we lose Illuminate Primordial at that point, because then it's a 6-drop or 7-drop, whatever it is, that's not good enough in the deck, and we refocus on recycling our instants and sorceries that exile things at that point, more so than. So we'd lose a whole bunch of cards off of the list, but we would also lose a lot of potential power. Like, a lot of our comes into play abilities at that point get a lot weaker. I think we still keep the major token makers, the Hermit, the. We're losing so much off of this deck if we cut that, though. Like, at that point, I feel like we've lost a good chunk of the deck, and I almost need to go back and put other cards on the list that aren't there anymore because we lost so many things. Because if we lose the ability to blink our stuff and get the comes into play abilities again, we are losing. Let me scroll back up. Okay. So we're in the right section. So we'd be losing re-triggers on things like Soul Warden, extra tokens from Deranged Hermit and those creatures, more life gain from creatures coming in, Eternal Witness to buy back things that we've lost during the course of the game, more life gain, more ways to buy back our dead things since Blinking Revelark will work. More tutors with Ranger of Eos, because we do have a fair number of 1-drops still in the deck. Like, we have like 5, I think. We have Soul Warden, Essence Warden, the Might, the Sarah Ascendant or whatever, the 1-drop that's basically a 6/6 flying lifelink in our deck, in case we need a big flying body. Plus it gains us 6 life a turn, so we get all of those, and I think there's 1 or 2 others that are still on the list. There were definitely got Death Greeter directly there. That gains us life when creatures die. So yeah, we got enough targets for Ranger of Eos where blinking him might get us the rest of the creatures in our deck that he can go grab and get all of them going. And we do have the. We still have Abiding Grace, but I got rid of Martyr of Sands and the Children of Corliss. We might not need Abiding Grace anymore. This is why it helps to think of the deck in different terms. Like, yeah, what are my 1-drops now? Because we do have 1-drops and they are good, but they're not. So the best thing we can do with them right now is survival them away and get them back with Abiding Grace, but we can get them back with like 3 other creatures in our deck too. Like, we can grab them back with E-Witness, Revelark, and Vesperlark, just off the top of my head. So we don't necessarily need Abiding Grace. And the 1 life gain when we don't have anything is, like, it's relevant in this deck, but it's not essential, so we have Soul Warden is 1. I think Abiding Grace is going. Leonin Elder is 2. That's one of the other ones I had forgotten. That's the artifact-based Soul Sister. Essence Warden, so we're up to 3. Death Greeter is 4. Nope. Night. Haywire Might is 5. It might be one of the best ones we can get back since it can sacrifice itself to eat opponents' artifacts and enchantments, but Again, we have other ways to get them back, so 6 with the Ascendant. Yeah, we literally have 6 cards this thing interacts with profitably, and only like 3 of them are. So we have 6 cards that this thing can get back. We have 3 cards in the deck where that's reasonable, like Haywire Might, the Sarah Ascendant, because it's a large flying lifelink creature, and its interaction with our 1 drops and Survival of the Fittest seem to be like our main ways to utilize this card. So yeah, we can cut it off of the life gain list at the bottom here too. Alright, well, that's 1 card that when I put it in the deck, it made perfect sense, but now that we are this far along, it doesn't, so. And this is why it helps to, like, stop looking at the list for a while and come back to it. Like, that would not have dawned on me before where we were at with that. And I figured this out while we were going through trying to look for reasons to cut, like, all of our comes into play effects, matters cards. Which I think we still have way too many on this list for that to be a thing. Forget exact. Alright, we passed Ranger of Eos. Avengers, an absurd blink target. Those don't matter. Illuminate Primordial is a really good blink target. We do need to have enough to merit all these cards, otherwise we might be able to cut like multiple things. Like, I'm thinking about it now, it's like, did I want more life gain? I have a bunch of things that gain me life when creatures come into play, because creatures coming into play is one of the most common things in Commander, besides lands. And I also have a bunch of cards that give me life when lands come into play. So it's not like I'm not running all of those, but maybe there's a world where this is not correct and I'm focused too much on the creatures coming into play when I should be focused on just gaining huge chunks of life regardless. Darksteel Mutation, Teferi's Protection, Windgrace's Judgment. Yeah, there's a part of me that wonders if, like, if we didn't focus so much on the creatures coming into play gaining me life. We do have a few things that are totally worth blinking because we get so much more from them. Like, Luminate Primordial is really good to blink. And yeah, blinking the creatures that make a ton of tokens is super helpful, and we can gain huge amounts of life from them. That's the problem. We can gain huge amounts of life. Like, blinking a deranged hermit every turn when we have even 1 soul sister out is 6 life for doing that. If we have Bilbo, that's literally 12 life, because each one of them is a separate trigger from the Soul Warden. So we would get an extra point of life for each individual one. So we would actually gain 12 life just by blinking Deranged Hermit or Deepwood Hermit. Deep Forest Hermit, whatever his name is. So we have both of those things going on. There are also 1 power creatures we can get back with the Vesper Lark. And the Vesperlark is a thing we can get back with Revelark, as are the one power creatures that are making 5/1/1 tokens. Also, unless both of them are in play at the same time, the squirrels will at max be 2/2s, so the squirrels are underneath all of our wrath effects that care about power. Also, we can just choose not to upkeep Deranged Hermit if that becomes a thing. Or if we can, we might be able to wait out the Deep Forest Hermit. So those all technically work. At the same time, Deranged, or not Deranged Hermit, the Avenger of Zendikar is not. Like, it makes a bunch of O1s, but then it can grow the O1s, and we certainly have the ability to landfall multiple times in a turn in order to get um, counters on the plants. Now, granted, they start off as O1, so even if we made them 2/3s, they're not that likely to kill our opponents unless we are making like hundreds of them at a time. Also, that's the one that's unbound by. Yeah, like the Deranged Hermit always makes 4 tokens. Avenger of Zendikar, as long as we keep playing lands, can keep making more and more tokens, which is more and more life gained. I don't know. There's a version of this deck that has very few of these comes into play matters cards, and there's a version of this deck that has a ton of them, and I don't know which one is correct. Although thinking about it now, maybe I don't need the Awakening Zone. Like, Bitter Blossom is so cheap, and the one life loss is immediately offset by any of the Soul Sisters. And Black Market Connections also lets me pay life to draw cards or make treasure, which can trigger life gains. Like, if I pay 1 life to make a treasure and I have the Fangren Marauder or Maul or whatever it is in play, and I gain 5 life off of that, that lets me do the other 2 things for free. So I'm losing 1 life to do all 3 things on Black Market Connections. Also, if I have enough life gain from a creature coming, like, I can net gain life off of Black Market Connections by doing all 3 modes. So, with the right combination of cards in play. So, I kind of want to stay where things like that are happening, where no matter what I'm doing, I'm gaining life. Like, that was one of the mentalities of the deck I had when starting this, is I wanted to gain life basically for everything that happens over the course of a game. I did cut a few cards so I don't gain life for everything, but I do gain life for a lot of things. So, and I can gain a large amount of life for those things. So, the repeatable token makers that we have, like where we get a token every turn, Bitter Blossom is making little flyers, which helps, chump block giant angels coming at me that don't have trample, which is most of them, and most dragons too, for that matter, and demons. Like, Flample doesn't show up all that often. Either you have flying or you have trample. You rarely get the full Flample from it, so. Because that has a whole lot of evasion abilities in, like, modern Magic, where flying or trample are your primary ways to get through for damage in limited, so having both at the same time just seems like overkill. It's wonderful overkill, but you don't get it all that often. But yeah, I'm wondering if I don't, like, I've cut a bunch of the really expensive stuff, and I have other things that repeatedly make a token every turn. So I'm wondering if we can cut Awakening Zone then. So we cut it from here, and then we cut it from down here. Yeah, I think that's actually correct. That brings us down to 88. Alright, we have cut 2 cards so far, and we are 24 minutes in. Oh, this deck is so slow going for the cuts. Because it's hard to figure out what we don't need anymore. I am getting there, like, it does click sometimes that certain cards are no longer pulling their weight. Or that I've left things on the list a bit too long, like, we're already at the point where I should be cutting that particular card. I'm looking at Crucible because it's not essential. It does let us hit our land drops very consistently with... We have all of the regular fetches that go into this deck, and we also have Croson Verge, which is a huge game with Crucible. Like, sacking it to get 2 lands every other turn. Right, Croson Verge does come into play tapped, yes? Or no? Maybe we can do it every turn, that we don't need the mana. No, it does enter tap. I was thinking that, but I couldn't remember. So yeah, Croson Verge enters tapped, and then... So every other turn we can ramp 2 lands with Crucible, and that is certainly something. Yeah, unfortunately I only have 2 decks that currently can run Croson Verge, so it took me a while to remember if it comes into play tapped or not, and I wasn't 100% sure. It did seem like it should, though. And now that we've seen it, it's like, yeah, no, that makes sense. I could cut Polluted Bonds. That only leaves Fractured Seraph for opponents' land ramp, and sometimes opponents ramp a lot of lands, and we can gain a huge amount of life off of these two, which is the argument I made the last time I thought about cutting Polluted Bonds. But we're getting to that point where it's just like, yeah, that's nice and all, but at the same time, maybe we have to not keep all of these. Asa, Courser. Ailey is a repeatable way to use my tokens to exile my opponent's non-land permanents. Yeah, it seems way too good. One of Hope, Bolus's Citadel, Casualties of War, Teleportation Circle, Dawn's Light, Sholdred, Terrasunder. I do like Haywire Might a lot in this deck. I think it's actually fulfilling a role that is super helpful. It's a 1-drop, so it's tutorable with almost... It's a 1-drop 1/1, so it's tutorable with almost all of our creature tutors. In fact, I think it's tutorable with all of our creature tutors. Also, it's an artifact insect. I think we might literally be able to get this thing with every single one of our tutors. And it gains us 2 life and exiles a non-creature artifact or enchantment. So there are so many big, powerful, expensive cards in the format that this just annihilates. The fact that it could have been brought back with Abiding Grace and does get hit by Revelark and Vesperlark. And this thing just seems so perfect for the deck if we're up against a deck like ours where we're trying to build a critical mass of artifacts and enchantments that combo together to just be wonderful when they're all working. Like, the fact that this deck would be very sad if the opponent played a recurable Haywire Might. Oops. Oh, great, my mouse is doing this now. Alright, hang on a second. Okay, there we go. Yeah, every once in a while my mouse suddenly decides that it, instead of scrolling, it's going to be a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like resizing, like it's going to zoom, and I don't know why. That is like the second time it's done that, where I'm just scrolling through something and all of a sudden it stops scrolling and starts changing sizes. And I almost feel like it changed sizes, like I didn't get back to where I was. Is there a zoom option somewhere? Where I... Oop, nope, go back. Home, insert, draw, design, layout maybe? Oh man, things are... view, probably. There we go. I knew it looked wrong, and I didn't know where the thing went. Ooh, stop. Going there, back to home. There we go. Alright. So, anyway. Now I've lost my train. Oh, Haywire Might and how it works with a bunch of the cards in the deck. Yeah, Haywire Might feels like a good card for the deck, and I do want to keep it because it works with everything else. Again, my metric is how sad would I be if an opponent played Haywire Might, and I'm just looking at my cool things going, well, that's about to be gone forever because we cut Rift Sweeper. And the answer is pretty sad some of the time, and very sad a small percentage of the time. Like, losing any one card shouldn't be that bad. It's the recursion on Haywire Might that we can potentially do. Like, this was probably our best card to combine with Abiding Grace. Just being able to do that every turn cycle. And we have plenty of cards that could enable doing that every turn cycle anyway. Oh, Resplendent Angel, I already cut all of your friends. Are you gonna go too? It genuinely might. Like, there's not... I like it because it makes a bunch of flyers that are actual threats on defense. I am not thrilled with it because it makes a lot of flyers that are threats on offense, and I don't want to win the game that way. And if I have this and it's doing the thing, and I can just be attacking with a 4/4 Flying Vigilance Angel every turn until my opponents are dead. Again, I don't think I want the deck to... I know I don't want the deck to win that way, but I also don't want the deck to just sit there on the win and go, no, I want to win the fancy way. Like, if the deck doesn't just win the fancy way, then I don't think that's the legitimate way to win with the deck. Now, granted, the Angel isn't always going to be that powerful. Like, sometimes it's going to make a handful of Angels, but I can't attack a lot of players. So I won't. Like, I'll attack the players I can since they're vigilant, but I won't attack the players that have, like, a 5/5 dragon in play that's holding them off, unless it's really correct to do that. So... And then they'll wind up all getting killed by a Wrath effect eventually, and I'll have gained a bunch of life for playing them, but that's about it. You know, like, them coming into play will gain me life off of the Soul Warden cards. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can cut it then. I am a little sad that our primary way to make defensive flyers is going to be Bitter Blossom, and that's it. Like, that is our main way to make a whole bunch of flyers to defend our life total. But at the same time, these things are so big that they're not just defending our life total, they are actively killing our opponents a lot of the time. Yeah, there's no middle ground with this. Like, they are big flyers that have vigilance. Like, either they can attack and they are going to absolutely crush our opponents because we can make one every single turn, or they can attack and they're doing their job as defensive plays. Like, if I could make a whole bunch of, like, giant flying walls for gaining life in this deck, I would absolutely be running that card. Like, that would be the ideal card for this deck. Are there any more copies of Resplendent Angel? Because I feel like there are. No? Not one in the life gain section? Okay. Because it is a life gain creature in addition to everything else. Alright. Well, we're about halfway through the hour. And I've only made 3 out of the ideally 10 cuts we would make. Yeah, I want to try and get it down to at least 80 before we end, if I can. I don't know that we can, though. Well, we can cut like anything, but I want to have an actual good deck when we're done, so maybe don't just randomly cut cards. I keep coming back to the idea that if we weren't blinking as many things, maybe. Also, I'm wondering if maybe I do like Luminate Primordial because it's killing one creature per opponent. So similar to Windgrace's Judgment, eliminating like 3 permanents every time I cast or blink this thing seems pretty decent. It also, I think, has to hit their highest casting cost, like, or highest power. For each opponent, exile the creature that... Oh no, just exile target creature. I don't even have any restrictions on it. They just gain life equal to the power. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah, being able to exile a creature per opponent per turn cycle with the blink effect seems really good. Excuse me. Especially since it's exiling, and since I do not care about giving them life at all with how I'm planning on winning. Yeah, no, if I could give my opponents more life in exchange for all of their things, I would. Like, if there were Winds of Abandon, but it was a Swords to Plowshares instead of a Path to Exile, I don't think I could cram that in this deck fast enough. But yeah, I keep coming back to the idea of if we can cut the 2 repeatable blink effects, and some of that comes into play things that are in here primarily because we can blink them, but then I keep thinking about all of the value that we're getting from blinking most of these things, and it's just like, I don't want to give up that value, and I don't think we can get enough to replace that level of value, and I think I'm going to cut Michiko in the middle of this sentence about other things. Because I keep almost cutting her, and like I said the last few times we've been making cuts in the other videos, if I'm thinking about cutting it this much, and it's just one card, especially, like, thinking about cutting, the circle and the closet, like, that will be a major thing to the deck, like, the things that I cut because I've cut those cards might get to the point where I need to add stuff back in to replace all of the things that I'm losing. Michiko is just a 4th No Mercy effect. Like, we already have No Mercy, Dread, and Teysa. So Michiko is the 4th No Mercy effect, and while her effect is good, there will be times when it's not the best. Like, Michiko is way stronger when I already have another No Mercy in play. That's where her real power lies, is not only do you lose the things you're hitting me with, you also lose another permanent per thing on top of that. And that can overwhelm an opponent that's not trying to kill us with one giant angry creature that's indestructible. But that scenario seems a bit too narrow, and I keep considering cutting her, so let's just go ahead and pull the trigger on that. Sorry, Michiko. At least you got consideration. The Witch King never even was on the list, just because I knew we weren't going to. That was Kamigawa. Head back up to here and start thinking about other cards we could be cutting. What else? Almost entirely on this. I do keep seriously considering cutting Polluted Bonds or Shattered Seraph, and I think in this case it's Polluted Bonds because it's damaging the opponents and gains less life than the Seraph. The Seraph gains me 3 life. The downside to the Seraph is that it dies. The Seraph dies to my removal package. Polluted Bonds does not. Maybe it's the Seraph. It's one of these two is going to go. Um, the argument for polluted bonds is it's less life gained. It damages the opponents, which I don't care about one way or the other. Like, that's not actually helping me, and it might upset them because they are losing life more so than. Like, if I'm only gaining life, opponents usually don't care because life gain is not that big a deal until it's, you know, the more life you're gaining and the faster you're gaining it and the less easily damaged you are, the more that becomes an issue. Like, if we're hiding behind all of these things that will stop the opponent from being able to damage me effectively, then we're good. So polluted bonds dealing damage to them is not something I care about, but at the same time, the Shattered Seraph is a 3 power creature, so it's going to die to my mass removal. Like we have 2 cards. It's Battle of Bywater and Dust to Dawn, I believe, are the only 2 destroy all big creatures that we're running. But it is dying to those, so now 2 of my wraths are killing it. Also, because it's a creature, it is dying to a lot of our opponent's stuff. Probably to their wraths. Like, it's not a thing that's going to draw a ton of heat towards it. Huh. What was the creature? I'm blanking on it now. Is it Sanguine? Fire, Sacrament, Statuette, Brushstroke, Spy. There's too many Sanguine things. I can picture the creature. Hang on. It's in one of the conspiracy sets. I think it was the first one. So, Magic. Conspiracy. It was a reprint in the set, but. Blanking super hard on it. I remember, like, I'm thinking of it because I'm thinking of flying creatures that gain life, like, as a secondary effect of them existing. And, 5 mana, like, Black Enchantment and White Flyer, like, the 2 of them are kind of in my head together, and now I'm thinking, like, there was a card that I was expecting to add, and I don't think I ever did, and now. Where is she? Because she's definitely well, she's from one of the 2 conspiracy sets, and I thought it was the first one. Wait a minute, was Expropriate in the second set? Expropriate was in the second set, and it was in the same one. So there's a story about So my brother also plays Magic, and he was in a different pod than me when we did this particular conspiracy draft. So he had this vampire out that was gaining him life. Here, we'll do blacks, that way we see less cards. I should have done that in the first place. And he hadn't been attacking anybody, really. And one player at the table all of a sudden decides that they need to cast a removal spell and they're going to kill his vampire. And his response to that, after this long game, Sangromancer, that's what it is. Opponent's creature dies, I may gain 3 life, and opponent's discards a card, I may gain 3 life. Yeah, I was expecting to put this on the list, and then it never got there. It's a 4-drop 3/3, not a 5-drop 3/3. So the opponent kills it arbitrarily. Like, he hadn't attacked this particular opponent. He hadn't attacked anybody, actually. And he'd just been building up resources while gaining life as opponents attack each other and their creatures die, and he's gaining like 3 to 6 life, and player decides, okay, your dumb life gain card is the problem, and I'm going to kill that. So his response to that was to expropriate on his next turn. He chose Time Walk, that player chose Time Walk, and the other players chose to give him stuff because they didn't want to get attacked during all the time walk turns. So he then used all of the creatures he stole from the other players to kill that opponent over the 2 time walk turns. That is one of those. Did you really just poke me? Okay, Angry Bear is standing up now. But yeah, that is. Whenever I see this card, I think of that particular story. So, and I knew I meant to put this on the list, and then somehow I didn't. So there is a bit of temptation for this instead of Death Greeter, because Death Greeter gives me 1 life whenever a creature dies, and Sangromancer gives me 3 life when an opponent's creature dies. It also has the random upside of giving me 3 life if the opponents are discarding cards. Like, we don't have any discard anymore. We got rid of Raven Man and Fenlurker. Well, Raven Man is the only one that would work, because Fenlurker and Karn exile from the hand. They don't discard, but then the card goes to exile instead. So, Raven Man's the only card that would have interacted with this from our deck. But our opponent's creatures dying is a thing that's going to happen anyway. So, gaining 3 life when that happens. Plus, if they discard for something else, if other players have discard effects and they use them, then we're gaining 3 life every time one of the. Like, if they discard cards to draw cards, if they loot, if they rummage, if they Wheel of Fortune, we are gaining all of this life from opponents discarding cards, even though we're not the ones making them discard, and it has the other life gain thing attached to it. So maybe we'll replace Death Greeter with Sangromancer. I want to focus on getting the cards out of the deck before I add another card into the deck, but let's just add Sangromancer up here so I remember to consider it later on. Oops, it is Sangromancer, right? Yeah, okay. So we'll just leave that there for now. I know I meant to put it on the list, and somehow I glossed over it when we were doing card selection, and then I never came back to it after that. So that is a card that I want to consider for the deck. We'll have to see if it makes it onto the list or not, though. Like I said, if it does replace a card, it's probably going to be Death Greeter, since they're playing in the same space. It does fall into the same category of what is and is not affected by it, but I think gaining the life, like gaining more life from their creatures dying and getting the benefit of other players' discard effects are going to give me life if they're not making me specifically discard, is enough upside to merit playing a creature that dies to 2 of our Wrath effects over a creature that doesn't and is tutorable. Yeah, I think that's the major downside. Like, if Sangromancer was a 2/2 flyer for 4, I would not even hesitate to pull the Death Greeter out and put it in. Now that I'm thinking about getting rid of Death Greeter, though, that brings me down to. What did we have? Like 10 1-drops? So we're going. Or less than 10 1-drops, so we're going down to 9. I think we still have enough, though. We have the 2 Soul Sisters that we have on the list. We have the Artifact Soul Sister, the Haywire Might, the Sarah Ascendant. What were the other 1-drops that we had? Shoot. I've forgotten what the other 1-drops were now. Because if we're cutting the Death Greeter, then we might be cutting enough 1-drops that we can cut the Ranger of Eos, who is himself a card that dies to our Wrath effects and is like a 4-drop 3/2. Alright, so we have the Soul Warden is 1, right? I didn't pass anybody. Just double checking. Alright, so the Soul Warden was 1. Leonin Elder is 2. Essence Warden was 3. Yeah, if we only have 6 and we're going to 5 with the Death Greeter, The Death Greeter is 4. I think we are cutting her, so let's just pull her off of the list. And keep the polluted bonds. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't remember how many we have. Because it might only be 6, and if we're going to 5, I think I can afford to cut the guy that gets 2 of them from the deck. And just run the other tutors that we have. So, Haywire Might is 5. Saracen is 6. Black Market. Nope. Okay, yeah, it is only 6. So if we were to cut the Death Greeter for the Sangromancer, which I'm probably going to do, then we can cut the Ranger of Eos, I think. Yeah. Alright. I think that's a reasonable cut then. So we cut him. Yeah, let's delete the Death Greeter and go to Mirrodin Besieged, I think it was. Or Scars of Mirrodin. Alright, go back. Go back to the Sangromancer. I need to see where she's from again. She is from Mirrodin Besieged. Alright. Go to Mirrodin Besieged. We add in the Sangromancer. It's 2 black, vampire. Vampire wizard or just vampire? Vampire shaman. Okay. 3 fly. There we go. Alright. We go ahead and cut those 2 off the list, and that brings us down to 84. Delete the Sangromancer from here. Clear those 2 off the list. Alright. 53 minutes. Can I cut 4 more cards in like 7 minutes? I don't think so. Sorry, that took a bit of time to process the thing, and it did let us cut another card off of the list in the Ranger of Eos, but I had to make sure that we could do that comfortably, so. Okay, well, if we start at the bottom and work our way up. Bilbo, Gaffer, Excise the Imperfect, Clever Concealment, Grand Crescendo, Black Market Connections. Am I going to cut the Grand Crescendo? It makes a whole bunch of tokens while making our guys indestructible, which gives us, it protects the creatures that are gaining us life when creatures come into play while putting a bunch of creatures into play at the same time. So neither of those is bad. We can also just cast it to make a bunch of dudes if that's what we need to do. But do we really need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? We need 6 cards that can protect our creatures. I think the answer is no, and therefore I'm inclined towards the ones that protect all of our things, which are Heroic Intervention, Clever Concealment, and Teferi's Protection, which leaves Flawless Maneuver and Grand Crescendo as the 2 we can choose to cut from, and Flawless Maneuver is just way, way stronger at being Being free is just an absurd thing on that card. So, yeah, I'm inclined to keep Flawless Maneuver over Grand Crescendo. I think we can afford to cut one more of the Protect All of Our Stuff cards. We need to cut a few more cards out of the redundant things. So, I was about to search for the word cut. I'm not even kidding. Alright, so we cut Grand Crescendo. That brings us down to 83. Yeah, we need to cut like a few more cards out of the redundant things where there's a lot of overlap, or we're never going to get through all of this. I'm probably not making the other 3 cuts that we need, but let me take a moment to evaluate a few things. If we run over the hour, that's fine. I'm probably only doing this 1 hour again, just so that way, like, staring at the list for 2 hours does not increase the speed at which I cut things. If anything, I get bogged down in the same logic each time. Right now, our only ways to remove only artifacts and enchantments as opposed to anything are the Aura Shards, Fracturing Gust, and Haywire Might. So I think all of those get to stay. The question now becomes, can I get rid of any other... Is there any creature-specific removal that I can get rid of? And I don't think there is any left. It's like Path and Swords, but those are like 2 of the most efficient removal spells. And I don't think I want to get rid of either one of them. Darksteel Mutation deals with things that we can't otherwise, primarily commanders. And since commander damage is one of the few ways we can lose the game when we have a billion life, I kind of want to not lose to that if I can help it. So just having more ways to interact, like having a way to interact with the commander that actually stops the commander when nothing else will. Do I have one too many wraths still? Like, as far as straight up wrath effects, we have Winds of Abandon, Ajani Strength of the Pride, Battle for Bywater, Dusk Till Dawn, Settle the Wreckage. That is 5 different wrath effects. And then we have multiple other cards that can get rid of multiple other cards. So, do we need all 5? And if we don't need all 5, which one don't we want? Part of me says it's Winds of Abandon. Like, that is the worst of the remaining wraths, I think. It does exile everything our opponents control. It gives them a bunch of basic lands, so that's a problem, but that is the only thing it does. And we already have Settle the Wreckage, which also gives them a bunch of basic lands, so there's a very real chance that we will cast both of them in a game, and they won't have lands to get anymore. And that we will recycle one or both of them, and, at that point I'm just exiling all of their stuff again and again and again. But yeah, I can see us not needing all of them. Maybe we have enough other ways to get our stuff back that we don't need Dusk to Dawn. Also, it is killing a couple of our creatures still. Like, Battle of Bywater. Keep calling it Battle for Bywater, but Battle of Bywater, gives us a food token for every one of our creatures, and most of our creatures do live through the battle, so that's actually kind of a huge game. Like, if we suddenly got all of these life gain artifacts that we can casually trade in for life. It is sad that it will have killed the Fangrene Mauler, but if I'm gaining the life off of them coming in from the Leonin, then I think I'm good. Also, if we have the Fangren afterwards, when I'm casually eating this food and gaining 8 life per food. Yeah, if I'm going to cut one of them, I feel like it's Dust to Dawn, Settle the Wreckage, or Winds of Abandon. And I think I'm inclined towards Dust to Dawn. Alright, let's go ahead and cut that one off the list. Hour and 1 minute now. Brings us to 82. Alright, we didn't quite get to 80, but I feel like it's going to take a little bit more time to get, like, anything else off of the list, so I think we're going to call it there. We're getting there. We only need 22 more cards off the list and we'll be done. Unfortunately, this looks like it's going to be, like, 3 more streams at this rate. Yeah. Maybe 4. Maybe 4 at this rate. Like, the closer we get, the more it feels like we slow down. But we did make progress, so I feel good about that. So that's going to do it for me for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.